Our top focus on WION Business Insights. India and China have taken a major step towards easing tensions. WION sources say that Beijing will soon lift curbs on the exports of fertilizers, rare earth magnets and tunnel boring machines to India. The three key demands New Delhi had raised with Beijing. Reports also suggest that India and China have agreed to reopen border trade and resume direct flights. This follows two rounds of talks last month between External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and his Chinese counterpart Wang Yi, and comes after disengagement of troops along the line of actual control. Shipments of these critical items, officials say, have already begun moving to India. The move offers immediate relief across key sectors. Fertilizer supplies had been hit after China suddenly curbed exports, directly impacting the availability of ammonium phosphate during the key season. Tunnel boring machines, many manufactured in China for global companies, had been stuck, delaying critical infrastructure projects there. And restrictions on rare earth minerals and magnets had raised red flags for India auto and electronics industry. With these curbs now lifted, supply chains for manufacturing and agriculture are expected to stabilize. This reset in India-China trade ties comes against the backdrop of rising U.S. pressure. The U.S. has raised tariffs on Indian goods to 50%, among the highest in the world. This has nudged New Delhi closer to its BRICS counterparts, the bloc which now represents a majority of global GDP in purchasing power terms. They have now been vocal on perhaps building alternatives to the US dollar. For India, closer economic engagement within BRICS could expand access to supply chains, finance and technology. Experts say that Trump's aggressive tariff policy may be accelerating the very BRICS unity it has long sought to prevent. And well, for more on this, we are now being joined by Manoj Kewal Ramani, Fellow China Studies and Chair Indo-Pacific Studies. He's joining us live from Bangalore on WION Business Insights. Welcome to WION. First up, what is your take on India's renewed engagement with China, especially on the trade front now?
Thank you so much for having me. Look, I think it's a good news, right? There's a good output. We finally got two countries who've had a difficult relationship historically, but particularly in the last 5 years, engaging with each other. From an Indian perspective, trade with China and even investment from China is an important tool for India's developmental objectives. So this engagement is positive, and I think this is a first step that we must start to build upon. I think it's good that both countries are talking. Trade is essential to stabilize this relationship. We are both geographical neighbors. We are going to remain geographical neighbors. And we need to have more things in common and more cooperative outcomes rather than hostility.
Right. We've also been witnessing BRICS unity amid U.S. tariffs. Do all these developments signal a broader shift in India's trade alignment, especially when U.S. has slapped a 50% tariff on India?
Look, I think we need to look at the American tariffs from a particular perspective of what's going on in the United States. It's not just India, it's America's closest allies and closest partners have been dealt with quite harshly. In terms of how India deals with America, we must continue to engage with them. We must continue to arrive at some sort of a reasonable trade arrangement. America is a huge demand sink. And if India wants to export and expand an export-driven growth economy, it will need America as a partner. Even when it comes to technology, it needs America as a partner. That said, I think that the events of the last few weeks have told us that there's much more that needs to be done in terms of diversification of India's trade basket. I think this is something that in India we've been thinking about for some time because of the nature of the relationship with China and the need to de-risk trade for China. Today, we've got far more impetus because of also what the United States has done. Are the BRICS countries useful in terms of that? Yes, to a certain extent. But what's the demand in the BRICS countries? That's something that we have to see. India's trade with Russia is very limited. It's only grown because of the energy trade in the last few years. India's trade with Brazil and with other BRICS countries is also quite limited. And the demand is a challenge, right? China can be a potential source of demand. But if you look at data from this year, what you will see is that Indian exports to China have continued to fall. Our trade is growing because our imports from China are growing, which is not a bad thing. But at the end of the day, we need to find a place which demands Indian manufactured goods. So we'll have to look westward for that. So while BRICS may be good in terms of building some resilience on issues of payments, issues of food security and things like that, it's not going to satisfy demand loss from America.
Right. My last question to you. Could balancing ties with both China and the US help India gain more leverage in global trade negotiations?
I think we shouldn't be looking at it in that way. I think what we should be looking at is firstly that the Indian trade basket needs to be diversified, basically to reduce risk as far as possible. There will still be risks. The second part is that we need to deal with China because China is the world's largest manufacturer. It has certain kinds of skills, it has certain kind of technologies, it has certain kind of products which we need. And therefore trade with China must continue. On the other hand, we need the United States, not from a demand perspective alone, but also from the point of view of having a partner with whom we can develop certain critical and safe supply chains. I understand that today we are going through a period of turbulence in this relationship with the United States, but the long-term trajectory and the long-term interests of the US and India continue to coincide. It's for the US administration, this administration, to see that those interests coincide. And that's where I think our diplomacy has to further come into play. And to some degree, we have to have patience in dealing with the United States, given what it's going through domestically. So I would look at it from the perspective of diversification and Indian growth. What serves Indian growth? And what serves Indian growth is the ability to deal with all players. And each brings something different to the table. That said, I want to add one last point. As much as I'm pleased that we are finally engaging with China on trade much more substantively, I think that we need to have a note of caution when it comes to this issue of restarting of fertilizers, tunnel boring machines, and rare earth magnets. The tunnel boring machines and fertilizers were stalled at ports because of export clearances. Those are straightforward issues and can be resumed immediately. But the export licensing requirement for rare earth magnets is a policy issue. It's not going to go away today or tomorrow. It's going to be a time period where Indian companies will have to continue to apply and acquire licenses. So, and these can be, the knob on these can be turned up at any point of time. So as much as it is a positive step that we are engaging again, we need to be cautious to continue to diversify.
Right. Thank you so much for joining us here on WION and sharing your insights with us.
Thank you.